Hey, welcome NFL football fans. That time again, time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr., and here we are. Week one was fantastic in the NFL. It was, we had new coaches, we had rookies doing great things. We had a terrific comeback by a veteran who is making a very strong case for being the best quarterback in the history of this fantastic American sport here. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to break that down. And also we got fantasy football tips coming up for you. We're going to do our picks of the week, the best games of week two coming up. And also for those of you who like a little juice, as it's called, we do have our Gambler's Delight segment. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. So as you know, I do not work alone here. I do enlist the help of just the very, very best. So here he is, the man many of you already follow on Twitter at Chris L Sports. That's at CHRISL Sports. And here he is from an undisclosed location somewhere in beautiful Southern California, my favorite East Coast intellectual, none other than Chris Lardieri. Hey, Chris, what's up out there, man?
Charles, great to be back after the summer off. NFL is back. As always, I appreciate the phenomenal introduction. And I know there was a lot of hype and hyperbole about rules changes in the NFL and teams not playing their best players in the preseason. But it's great to have football back. It's as unpredictable and as exciting as ever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's true. Fantastic. And, the thing is, it's too bad all the new head coaches, they kind of got off to a bad start. 7 new head coaches. They went 0-7 in their games, highlighted by, of course, John Gruden with losing to the Rams. And, Gruden, he traded away Khalil Mack off that defense. That was one of his moves, traded him away to the Bears, who had an epic collapse against the Packers. And I remember in the first half of that game, Khalil Mack was everywhere for the Bears. And they were talking about him and what he was doing and what he brought to the defense. And it was a foregone conclusion that they had squashed the Packers, and then came that great comeback. But really, Gruden trading him away, but they got draft picks in 2019 and 2020. And the rumbling, though, from Raider Nation is that basically it's pretty much over at this point. And one thing was, maybe Gruden should have, or the Raiders, but they gave Gruden the power. Maybe they should have hung on to Mack for this season and then made that same deal that they're going to make next season, but they would have had him still.
Yeah, I think they should have followed the Le'Veon Bell model. Now, I know that's not working out that great.
Right.
Previously, the Redskins did that with Kirk Cousins. You've got him under control. And I get the point. They don't want to pay him huge sums of money like the Rams are with Aaron Donald and have that all tied up in one defensive player. But, at some point, you've got to make a run with this team. You've got a new coach. You're moving to Vegas. He's clearly one of the best defensive players in the NFL, as we saw last Sunday night. I just don't get it. I mean, from an economic sense, I see what they're trying to do, but there was no need to do it. It wasn't like they had to trade him away at that point in time.
Exactly. So more of a timing issue. And, well, we look at these. What would you say the biggest surprise of week one? I mean, we had your boy, I know about you Giants fans out there, Saquon Barkley, the highly touted rookie out of Penn State. Hey, 18 carries, 106 yards, 1 TD. But how about Ryan Fitzpatrick, the wily old vet for Tampa Bay, going into New Orleans and hanging 48 on the New Orleans Saints? More impressive with him throwing for over 400 yards and 4 TDs, or Sam Darnold getting the start for the Jets. He throws a pick six on his very first pass and then goes on to, quarterback a Jets team, even though it was a total team effort there, more so. But they hang up 48 points in his debut also.
Yeah, I think if I'd have to say Fitzpatrick. I mean, no one saw this coming. The Saints, a lot of people, there's a lot of Super Bowl hype about them. People are predicting them to be the team to make the run this year. And the fact that their defense was much improved last year as they made a nice run in the playoffs. But I think that's more of a surprise, just given the fact that Jameis Winston suspended, not a lot of optimism down in Tampa Bay. People are pretty much have Dirk Cutter as the favorite first coach to be fired, now that apparently TV star Hugh Jackson may live to see another week. But hand in hand with that, I think too with Darnold, while it was impressive, you make a great point. It was a team effort. Stafford threw 4 interceptions. And frankly, there have been a lot of good reports coming out of Jets training camp that not only did Darnold look good, but he was going to be the starter. And look, I think bigger picture, being a Giants fan, I mean, this is something that could haunt the team for years. If they let pass a potential future starting quarterback for a good 10, 12 years in favor of Saquon Barkley. And I get it. The Giants needed a running back, and that's the new trend in this league, to pick running backs high and early in the first round. But if you let Darnold get away and he's right across the hallway staring at you for the next decade, I mean, it's going to be a ton of second guessing in New York, which doesn't need any more second guessing in their media.
But if Saquon Barkley, it could be a win-win, because if Saquon Barkley turns out to be that generational running back they've been looking for, and Darnold turns out to be the quarterback the Jets were looking for, I think it's a win either way. Now, granted, quarterbacks do tend to have longer careers than great running backs, but if Barkley turns out to be the real deal, I think it's all good.
Yeah, but however, the Giants seem to think Eli Manning is Tom Brady, and I mean that in the sense of, Tom has his show and his Alex Guerrero and his avocado ice cream, and he wants to play till he's 45. Guy's a freak of nature. With Eli, I know he's been very durable, but look, his numbers have been regressing. And frankly, Davis Webb, who everyone seemed to think was going to be the heir apparent at some point in the future, got released in training camp. So now you're back to square one. So I think from that aspect, if it doesn't work out, even if Barkley's a great running back, who's the quarterback going to be in a few years? Because it's very rare that you get there to pick that high in the draft. You got to be really bad. And there was a crop this year of numerous quarterbacks, and everyone thought the Browns were going to take Darnold. So it remains to be seen. Look, it's overreaction Monday, as the saying goes, after week one of the NFL. But just I think a trend that's really worth keeping an eye on here.
Well, the Browns could have had Saquon Barkley and Darnold. Really, anyways, let's not analyze the Browns in their draft. But the Browns, they did get that 21-21 tie against the Steelers. So kind of more impressive, or was it about the Browns and really an underrated defense? The Browns are looking pretty nice on the defensive side of the ball. And on offense, you got Tyrod Taylor. Now he's got good targets. He's got Josh Gordon is back. Jarvis Landry is there. They gave the Steelers all they could have. And honestly, I watched that game. If the Browns knew anything about how to actually win a football game, they would have won that game over the Steelers.
Absolutely. I mean, I watch Hard Knocks. They've got the talent there. They're building it. My one takeaway, I'm not impressed with Hugh Jackson. He's got two coordinators who seem like are running their own little fiefdoms there, or street gangs, or whatever analogy you want to use. And look, I mean, I completely agree with you. And not only that, lining up for that field goal, having it blocked by TJ Watt. I mean, how fitting can that be? The Browns are about to win a game, their first game of the year. They've only won one in their last 32, and the kick gets blocked. So, yeah, I mean, Hugh seems like a nice enough guy. The players seem to like him, but I got to agree with you. It's all in the details, and I'm really kind of skeptical when it comes to that.
Yeah. There we go. And then, another quarterback, a veteran making his debut, Alex Smith there in Washington. They take care of business against Arizona, winning 24-6. And one of the things, Arizona, they rolled the dice, as many teams like to do. You roll the dice on Sam Bradford. Looks like it's come up snake eyes. And really, even with David Johnson back there in the backfield, I think with them relying on Bradford, who I don't even know what he can really do when he's healthy, because he hasn't stayed healthy long enough. Everyone gambles on his potential, but it looks like it could be a long, long season out there in the desert.
I think it's going to be, and at some point in time, they're going to have to determine. We've got Josh Rosen on the bench, a first-round pick. At what point do we just say, hey, this is going to be your learning curve this year? Let's get you some reps, because it looks like it's definitely going to be a long season. I feel bad for David Johnson. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the NFL. But even at the time when the Cardinals signed Bradford, I was really wondering. Guy's always hurt. He can never really play for a full season. And tell you what, though, he's his agent or whoever it is advising him on things. I mean, guy's made a killing money-wise for what was really an underwhelming performance in the NFL big picture.
Yeah, that's true. And then when I look at Denver, they got the win over, narrowly got the win over Seattle, but that was really about the defense. And, I wonder if Case Keenum has turned into Case Keenum again. Has the clock struck midnight? He really didn't look that great. I think he threw 3 picks out there.
Yeah, definitely reverting, and everyone's going to go back to the fact, well, he had really good receivers with Diggs and Thielen in Minnesota. He had Pat Shurmur, now the Giants coach, as his offensive coordinator. Was it more his teaching, the parts around him, or was it a case of, look, it's a first game, these guys are rusty, Seattle still got some pride on defense. Remains to be seen, but at the end of the day, my sons both my kids met Case Keenum at Rams training camp back in the day. Heck of a nice guy. I wish him all the best. So I hope he does well. But that said, it's not like the Broncos have the weapons the Vikings do.
That's true. And you know what? For the record there, Chris, you're a heck of a nice guy too, but I don't know if I will want you quarterbacking my NFL football team. I just don't know.
I appreciate it. I'd rather be your general manager than your quarterback or even your minister of propaganda, as it were.
Okay. Well, hey, Kansas City Chiefs, we got to talk about them. Pat Mahomes finally getting the reins. Alex Smith is out of town. They take care of business. And, it comes down to those speed merchants there. Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, just tearing it up against the San Diego Chargers. The Chargers, though, as they typically do, started slow, a lot of mistakes, drop passes, everything else, and they lose that game against KC, which I think they could have won that game. I think it was 38-28, and the Chargers shot themselves in the foot, again, as they tend to do early in the season.
Absolutely. Some things never change. And, one of the over-unders I looked at before the season, everyone's very high on the Chargers. Their win total was 9.5. Listen, if I had clients, I would advise them to take the under. This is a team who is almost as cursed or inept or whatever, ball and throws interceptions at inopportune times. I know the guys get great stats. He's had a great career, but look, they've gotten to do that. And I'm sure it's a function of him being frustrated and forcing the ball, whatever. But look at his receivers dropping the ball. They still can't find a kicker. I mean, Dallas releases their kicker. Do you think the LA Chargers pick him up? No, they bring in Caleb Sturgis. He misses a field goal. The defense, I know Joey Bosa was hurt, but their secondary got lit up. They didn't account for Tyreek Hill. You look at the Jaguars-Giants game. Beckham had a great game, but really I don't think he had really a lot of deep balls. I mean, he had like 11 catches for I think about like 111 yards or so. The Jaguars were double teaming him at all times. They're only letting him have the underneath stuff. Why aren't the Chargers doing this at Tyreek Hill? The guy's basically a track star with hands. I mean, you've got to account for him. So, look, I know everyone thinks the Chargers are going to win the AFC East with the Raiders being down, the Broncos having question marks, but I don't see it. It's just something in this team. I don't know if they're cursed. It's in their culture. They're getting payback for the whole move, karmic payback. But, yeah, same old Chargers, Charles.
There we go. So, hey, everybody, like I said, we'll do the, here's the analysis side. We get into the picks of the week, Gambler's Delight special coming up after that. And we also end with some fantasy football tips. Let's go ahead and get into the picks of the week. But before we do that, Mr. Lardieri, I know you've always got a little wisdom for the football fans out there.
Absolutely. A lot of people came in talking about the new rules with the hitting of the helmet and wanting to reduce concussions. Yeah, you can run the gamut of comments between, this is ruining football, and from the other side, what are you supposed to do? You can't have these guys getting concussions and bringing massive class action lawsuits against the league. The refs are going to enforce it. After all this hype and babbling and commentary and hand-wringing on both sides of the fence, I believe there was one penalty called for it all weekend. So is it a function of the players get the hint or the refs being more lenient? I don't know, but I think it's a good start for now. If you ask me, I think the players have kind of gotten the hint and they've had to adjust the way they tackle. I know there are bang-bang plays and it's going to happen, but I was watching a college game between Michigan and Notre Dame. Guy clearly led with the head and knocked a receiver out, and I think it's good. We're not, at least so far, seeing that in the NFL. Related to that, I hit on this earlier. The Rams sat out all their starters. They were rusty in the first half of the Monday night game against the Raiders. They got criticized for it. They picked up the tempo. They really looked like a well-oiled machine in the second half. But that's another trend, and you need to keep this in mind the first few weeks. And people say, the NFL's changed. It's boring. These guys have maybe played a couple quarters of football. They'll get with it. Some of them just aren't even in game shape. But I do think, given that backdrop, I think at least the games are competitive. And finally, I don't know about you, Charles, a Dolphins fan. Were you the only person that I know, football fan-wise, that sat through that whole game and watched it to its conclusion? Because if so, I want to give you credit. And I also want to give the Titans credit for changing their uniforms, but I don't have the greatest eyesight. I can't see your numbers. Like, why would you have dark numbered? I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm babbling. But if you watch that whole game, props to you, Charles.
Yeah, I did not. I love to get props, but I cannot tell a lie. I did not watch that whole game, but I did love the result. So let's go ahead and get into it here. What we do is we don't pick every game. We just take the 3 or 4 most intriguing games of the week, give you our analysis, our picks. We keep track for the season, and then we normally bet something that neither of us ever pays up on. But that's how we do it here. But hey, so let's go ahead and get right into it. First game on the docket, Kansas City Chiefs, who were big winners last week. They are going into Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Mr. Lardieri, let's get the stats here, and then let's get your pick on this game.
Sure. I mean, you look at both these teams. The Chiefs had a phenomenal week one. Looks like Andy Reid's had no problems inserting Mahomes into the lineup, and this offense being high octane. On the flip side, Big Ben goes on the road. He has a dud. He'll even do this in Cleveland, as we saw this week. He's done it in previous years. Do they miss Le'Veon Bell? I don't know, but I do think that that Connor really had a nice game running behind that line, so maybe they don't miss a beat. I'm going to pick the Chiefs. What I think here, big picture, is that Andy Reid is, as I'm fond of saying, great guy. He's had a nice career as a coach, but guy's phenomenal in September. Just can't get it done in January and February. So what the heck? I think that offense is really rolling. The defense looked more improved this year on that side of the ball. And frankly, even if Connor did well last week against the Browns, I'm not sure how that team or that locker room's feeling right now. There's a lot of divergence of opinions on Le'Veon Bell's holdout and even if he will show up. So I'll pick the Chiefs coming on the road in an upset. I just like the way they're playing, and I feel like the Steelers are moving in an opposite direction.
Yeah, that's true. And I think not even – well, when we look at the Steelers, it's not just the Bell holdout on one side, but also we got to remember Ryan Shazier, their great linebacker. I think his career is over, even though I haven't announced it, but he got the neck injury last year. He's not there to solidify that defense. I think with the speed, we talk about Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. The Pittsburgh Steelers tend to give up some chunk yardage on defense. And I think this is just kind of styles make fights. It's about the matchups. And honestly, I love the Steelers, but I don't like the matchup here against the Chiefs. Although I will say this, the Chiefs secondary is not the greatest. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown can get loose back there, make this thing into a shootout. But at the end of the day, I got to go with the Chiefs here as well.
I'm glad we agree, but that is a great point about Shazier. You haven't really heard a lot of that, so that's why you listen to this show, Charles. You get that in-depth, below-the-radar analysis that the mainstream NFL media won't give you.
Yeah, and I'm sure with the Shazier thing, it's about figuring out, what the final payout is going to be. Honestly, that's probably what's going on behind the scenes.
Seriously.
Okay, so next game, New England Patriots. They were victorious last week over Houston. Houston looked a little bit rusty, but they're going to be in Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. The Jaguars, they beat your Giants 20-15 last week. But Leonard Fournette may be a little bit hobbled. If so, it'll be T.J. Yeldon getting the start there in the backfield. So we get our big matchup, Jalen Ramsey against Rob Gronkowski. And by the way, Jalen Ramsey, he did come out with his list of quarterbacks who, quote, suck, and Tom Brady was not on it. Tom Brady thanked him for that. I don't know how much, how Ramsey will feel about Brady after this week. He says he doesn't suck, and I think after this week, he's really going to know it because I think the Patriots go into Jacksonville, and I see them taking care of business against the Jags here. I don't trust Blake Bortles at quarterback to win a big game. And this is early season, but it is a big game. I'm going with the experience, the rings, and Belichick, and Brady, and Gronk. Talk to me.
I'm going to agree with you. Watching that Giants-Jaguars game, I had the observation. I said this to the son and to my son and a friend of mine. If even someone like Tyrod Taylor was quarterbacking the Jaguars that game, I think they beat the Giants by at least 2 to 3 touchdowns. Blake Bortles, even when he manages a game, manages to make it interesting for the other team. You combine that with the fact that even if Fournette plays, I think he's going to be hobbled. T.J. Yeldon doesn't scare me. If Fournette does play and he's at full health, I might lean to picking the Jaguars. I think they were that close in the AFC Championship game that year. The defensive line, secondary, phenomenal. Myles Jack, I can't believe this guy fell to the second round. But that said, the Patriots always seem to find a way to win. I'm going to pick them as well.
There we go. So we're in agreement so far. So, Chris, why don't you break down the next game? We got this should be a doozy here. The Carolina Panthers, who will be minus Greg Olsen, a great tight end, but he refractured that foot. He's going to be in Atlanta. Atlanta trying to get over their first-round loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sorry, first-week loss to the Eagles.
Yeah, the big NFC South showdown this early in the season. Not impressed with the Falcons. Steve Sarkisian, how this guy kept his job, I really don't know. It was like deja vu all over again at the end of the game with 4 shots in the end zone and Ryan looking for essentially Julio Jones and no one else. The Panthers really kind of slugged one out against the Cowboys to eke out a win. So both teams are kind of coming in hobbled on the offensive side of the ball. Despite the fact that Olsen's out, I do think the Panthers will win. The main reason is the Atlanta defense. I feel like they seem to wear down. They've got 2 key injuries on that side of the ball. Even if Ryan and Julio manage to hook up, I do think that what will happen with Olsen out is Cam's going to look a lot more to McCaffrey, whether he coming out of the backfield or he may even be forced to run more. I don't think the Falcons have a good defense for that. I think it'll be a close game, but I'm going to go with the Panthers. I like the way their D played last week, even though they're in Atlanta. They've had some success down there over the years. I'll pick them.
Yeah, my feelings on Matty Ice. Matt Ryan, as I say, the ice melts when the heat really gets turned up. But this week, when I look at the way Carolina played last week against Dallas, and I look at Dallas as kind of a team I think they're going to have a rough year this year. And Carolina, they dominated, but they only put up 16 points against them. I'm going to go with Atlanta. I think Atlanta at home. I think there's going to be a desperation factor. They really don't want to go to 0-2. Remember, the NFL season is so short. That's the thing. Climbing out of an 0-2 hole, it's going to take you probably a month to get back to something respectable. The division is competitive. Atlanta needs to have this game. I think Matty Ice and the boys will come through here. And the hobbled Greg Olsen, I think that's going to be the difference in the game here because he is a safety valve. He's the one guy they can really, really count on. So that's going to be a big adjustment for them. Atlanta needs to take advantage, come out hot, and, take care of business. I've got the Atlanta Falcons winning this game.
I'm glad that despite all your doubt of Matty Ice, you'll still pick him when necessary.
Oh, he crushed me when they lost that Super Bowl, though. Okay.
Everyone.
Let's go. Okay, so let's go and get down to it here. The last game here, the New York Giants, who, they had a big game there against Jacksonville, even they came up short. And like I said, they're going to be in Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys, Deke and Zach. Now they're trying to Dak and Zeke, right? Dak and Zeke. Jeez. Okay, everybody. Dak and Zeke trying to get it going. But I think what's happening here with the Cowboys, Dez Bryant's gone and Jason Witten is gone. And now Dez Bryant, for as much as he kind of ran his mouth and kind of ruffled feathers, I don't think he was necessarily a bad locker room guy. And we also know that Jason Witten is as professional as they get. He's definitely a blow not having him in the room. Now you've got Dak and Zeke actually being the focal points and the leaders. I think this game is going to show that Dallas is going to have a tough time this year. And I like the direction the Giants are going, at least in the short term here. Saquon had a big week last week. I think they continue that this week, and I think they go into Dallas, and even though it's the home opener there in Big D, I'm going to take the Giants.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Charles. And, every year it seems like the Cowboys and Giants open in week 1. So thank you to the NFL for moving it back to week 2. But that said, I always seem to be on the wrong side of predicting this game every year. In true George Costanza mode, my cynicism of the Giants means I'll pick the Giants to win. I do think they're a few turnovers away from winning that game against the Jaguars. I was impressed with their defense. Granted, it was Blake Bortles and Fournette was out of the game, but I felt like they kept the team in that game for good 50, 55 minutes. The Giants cut down on the turnovers, and Eli can connect on some wide open throws that he didn't last week. I think that'll bode well for them. And then, too, the Cowboys' offensive line is really in shambles. People aren't talking about that.
Right.
Zeke can't run. Dak doesn't have time to pass, and I think that's going to hurt them ultimately.
Yeah, and even when at the end of last season, when I watched Prescott, and he really just looks labored. And I mean, not just the physical, but on the emotional side, it looks like he's really having some difficulties out there. And like I said, I think they're going to struggle this year. And when you talk about the turnovers with the Giants, Eli did throw a pick 6 last week, and hey, they lost the game by 5 points. So hey, that's simple arithmetic right there. So I'm taking the Giants here.
Plus minus.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. So those are our picks. We're both going with KC to take care of business against Pittsburgh. The Patriots over the Jacksonville Jaguars. We split. I'm taking Atlanta to win at home, whereas Chris is taking the Carolina Panthers to take care of business there in Atlanta. And also, we're taking the New York Giants to beat the Dallas Cowboys. So now we get to have a little bit of fun here. Now everybody knows, hey, NFL, a lot of it is about the whole, gambling thing. It's gambling. So we don't advocate gambling here, only do it for fun. But if you happen to be in Vegas with a reasonable amount of money burning a hole in your pocket and you happen to be by the sports book, hey, football is the sport you want to bet on. We all know that. I'll go ahead and say it, That's the elephant in the room here. So if you happen to have that $20 in your wallet and you're walking by the sports book, here's a little advice for you. We've got our Gambler's Delight pick. And Chris, you being from New Jersey, not that has anything to do with gambling.
Yeah.
I don't believe any of those rumors. But we each have a pick this week. Chris, what have you got for us?
It's funny. It happens to, well, first and foremost, Charles, we should mention to our loyal listeners that if you're in the state of New Jersey, you can place a wager now, too, according to the Supreme Court of the United States. Now we've got 2 states you could do it in. But that said, there are a couple of dogs this week. That's my theme here on Gambler's Delight. I like getting the points. Even if you don't win the game, I like getting enough points so I at least can cash in my ticket and win some money and maybe go out to a nice dinner when I'm in Vegas or the Meadowlands or Monmouth Park or wherever it may be. There were a couple that stood out to me this week, and they were actually 2 of the games that we talked about. Chiefs getting 4 against the Steelers. That might be one I have a little bit less conviction on just because of the infamous Vegas zone where you get those 4 points and don't cover by a field goal, so you're down 1 and you lose. But what do I know about that? I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers. I've looked across some of the books in Vegas. They're as high as 6. While I'll stand by my pick. I think the Panthers win, which is even more icing on the cake. But I do feel if it's a close game, maybe they lose by 3-4 points. You're getting 6. You cover the bet. So where the proverbial mouth is, or is it the other way around? And say take the Panthers as a dog.
Okay. And, well, what I'm going to do is a game that we didn't talk about, but Houston, the Houston Texans playing Tennessee. Tennessee, we've got, Marcus Mariota was a little bit banged up last week against the Dolphins. Houston's defense is really quick. They're stout. They're strong. I think they can overwhelm Tennessee. And Deshaun Watson was really rusty last week against New England. Still, they were in the game the whole way. So I look for Houston to come out, take care of business there. Right now, they're 1.5-point favorite. I think they'll cover that rather easily against Tennessee, especially since we don't know if Mariota will even be able to finish the game there. But I'd say go ahead, take Houston, give that 1.5, and hey, you can thank myself and Chris next week.
I like it. I do agree that the Texans will get back on track.
Yep. Okay. So there we go. We've got the picks of the week. We got the Gambler's Delight. Only next thing coming up, I don't really delve into it, but Chris, he is a veteran. He knows what he's doing. So here we go with fantasy football tips from Chris Lardieri. Everybody lean forward, get the pens and pencils ready, and get ready to write down this pure gold.
All right, thank you. Well, in keeping with the overreaction of week 1 theme, same goes for fantasy football. Look, you look at free agency out there on the waiver wire. A lot of people are going to run out and pick up TJ Yeldon and use their fab budget to pay a pretty price to get him. That's great and all if you have Fournette and you need your handcuff, but I don't know if he'll be a long-term solution there. Doesn't sound like Fournette's going to be out long-term. You look at some of the other guys out there that are still sitting on waivers, like at Quincy Enunwa with the Jets, who was hurt all last year, had a nice week 1 with the Lions and the emergence of Darnold. I think potentially he's someone you can play there. What I am going to advocate is don't overreact and just pick someone up because they had a really good week 1. I mean, Royce Freeman with the Broncos wasn't the primary target. It looks like it's going to be typical Denver fashion where you have a running back by committee. Hold on, be patient. I mean, I've got Deshaun Watson as my quarterback. I've got Andy Dalton on the bench. Just because Watson had a bad week 1, I'm not going to play Dalton because he did well against the Colts. So my advice to you this week is watch the matchups. I was the unlucky recipient of having the LA Chargers as my defense, and they scored me -6 points last week. So maybe that's why I'm a little bitter and down on that team big picture as well. But my son said to me, "We've got to release them. You got to release them, Dad." And I said, "I can't. They're playing the Buffalo Bills," and that's the essence of fantasy football. Nathan Peterman, not to be confused with Jay of Seinfeld fame, is getting benched. Josh Allen, rookie in. I mean, I know there's a lot of hype about him, but the guy's never started an NFL game. If you got the Chargers defense, play them. I mean, I really think that last year, I think they had something like 5 turnovers against them. You need to think big picture like that. And getting back to quarterbacks, I mean, if Darnold's out there, I am an advocate of, even if you've got a top quarterback, much like the regular NFL, you need a backup. Darnold, Dalton, who I think, I mean, I got him in the last round of my draft. I do think with the emergence of Joe Mixon and John Ross, he could be a good quarterback for you if you need him as a bye week fill-in, or your starting quarterback gets hurt, suspended, whatever the case may be. So think big picture on that. Last year, I got Alvin Kamara after week 1. I thought he ran well, and I didn't think Adrian Peterson went well. I stashed him, and he had a phenomenal year for me, helped me get to the championship game. Another 2 guys that I think you could do that with, who are actually 3 that are hurt. You've got Sony Michel with the Patriots, rookie running back out of Georgia. He was hurt. You know, Belichick loves rotating running backs. They get in his doghouse one week and they're starting the next. Hold on to him, because I think by the end of the season he'd likely be a starter. Marlon Mack with the Colts. I know he was out. Really wasn't impressed with Wilkins running the ball for the Colts. I think the job is his to lose when he does come back and be healthy. And then finally, a receiver with the emergence of the great Ryan Fitzpatrick out of Harvard, Chris Godwin. A lot of people have been impressed with him since he came in the league last year from Penn State. He caught a touchdown with Deshaun Jackson possibly having concussion issues. I think Godwin's going to be a nice guy. Even if you don't play him this week, stash him on your bench. It's a long season. Guys get hurt. And then, as I mentioned earlier, play the matchups. I mean, like I said, having Deshaun Watson, should I bench him? No, he's going up against the Titans, and really that's a team right now that I think Ryan Tannehill's beating you. I think that bodes well if you're a Deshaun Watson owner. And look at someone like Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers. Guy went up against one of the best defenses in the league with the Minnesota Vikings. Don't give up on him. The Detroit Lions come to town. Expect him to put up big numbers. So, look, be calm, but at the same time, keep one eye open and don't give up. There's always hope. I mean, I guess you could always play the Browns unless you're Ben Roethlisberger, right?
There you go. And you know what? I got to give props because you just mentioned him. We didn't talk about it, but Adrian Peterson, he's looking pretty nice there in a Redskins jersey, wouldn't you say?
Another great resurgence, right? This guy's got 9 lives. I mean, pretty soon he's going to be playing on a team in every division in the NFL if he keeps going.
Okay, there we go. Okay, everybody. So remember, every single week through the regular season here, and then into the playoffs, and all the way to the Super Bowl, right here. This is an Inside Sports production. The show is NFL Football Talk. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. You can follow Chris on Twitter at Chris L Sports. And hey, every week it's the picks, it's the analysis, it's Gambler's Delight, it's fantasy football. This is one-stop shopping here, folks. And it's not about the hype or anything. We give it to you straight. You can only get it that way right here. Mr. Lardieri, you can take us out here. Final thoughts for the week?
Sure. Even though we're not millennials here, we do have an Instagram account now, Inside Sports TV. Be sure to follow us. The kids tell me they have these things called stories. They disappear after a while, but everyone seems to like them. I don't know, but it's another outlet to look at besides our Twitter and Facebook pages. And then the new Monday Night Football announcing crew. They got Booger McFarland on the sideline. I think Fox tried that with Tony Siragusa once. Didn't work so well. And while I think McFarland's a lot more eloquent and astute than Siragusa was, I'm just not a huge fan of a 3-man booth. Jason Witten was really underwhelming. I don't know why ESPN seems to think he's the next Tony Romo. And Joe Tessitore has done a great job with college football. He kind of reminds me of Gus Johnson, just getting excited over everything. So I know it's only one game and working out the kinks, but yet again, ESPN loves rotating the booth, and I think it's much ado about nothing. But we'll see as the season goes on.
So, yeah, Booger McFarland following Tony Siragusa. I guess to do that whole sideline gig, you need to be weigh at least 3 bills, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a job for defensive linemen, right? You can't have any kickers or quarterbacks down there.
It's a big man's game. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching. It's NFL Football Talk. Remember, it's an Inside Sports production. For Chris Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. We'll see everybody next week.